Hello. So today we've got some more comparisons from some different artists. So this is Frantisek Kupka. This was made, it was made in like 1913, 1914. And this is the Hubble Space Telescope image of, I think, the Orion Nebula. And what I find fascinating is how similar they are. Obviously, he had never seen images like this, but he was like, as were a lot of the early abstract artists, really into like spiritualism. A lot of them were into like theosophy and Madame Blavatsky and that culture of kind of the avant-garde of early modernism. And Kupka also was like a step further. He was like a spiritualist medium, like go to trance states, really into like naturism, vegetarianism, would do like a gymnastics routine every morning, but like he was like out there, and I do find that his work has a lot better flow than other abstract artists that weren't like explicitly a medium. Anyway, I think there's a really like lovely similarity between these images, and I'm intrigued as to like why that is. Why does like painting the unseen, which is what early abstraction was about, because of the advent of photography in the late 1800s, like realism as a skill in painting kind of became less necessary, and then you get like impressionism, like originally works that were insulted and called unfinished, and then a progressive kind of deconstruction of realism and painting things that you wouldn't have seen before, and painting the unseen and abstract art. And that's my kind of like that's my main interest, is like abstract art. And then what is it? Why do we paint it? And what does it represent? So I think there's something really interesting about basically the subconscious, the forms of subconscious that want to come out when we just express ourselves freely with colour and form, and how they end up mimicking like space. So it's like inner worlds and outer worlds, something about that. I've got some other artists. So we've got Willem de Kooning here. So this is a bit more contemporary. I think this was made like the 1950s. So obviously still way before these images came out. These came out in like the early 2000s. Maybe slightly harder to see the comparison. Maybe if this like had like a black background instead of a white background as kind of the base. But it's this idea of like abstract expressionism, like fluid, like fractal form, like trying to make composition that's pleasing to the eye. But for me, like there's something about like, especially like these bits, and then like those like the splattery bits. But it's to do with like fractals and like fluid behaviour, and but and again this is like pretty expensive, like mainstream central art narrative artworks that are really celebrated, but yeah, like abstract, like look like some people would like diss this and be like, I could make that, and like it's just a mess. And in some ways yes, but it's like a controlled mess, like it's like chaos, like controlled chaos, or like it's to do with the creative expression, and being able to like improvise, but there's something about like, I guess, accessing like a randomness and like unpredictability, that for me is obviously like, you know, Nebula are like are centers of creation, and there's something like messy but very kind of powerful. And then we've got this one. So I'm just going to do about Nebula on this one. I've got some other videos with like Cosmic Web and Deep Space Starfields, but particularly like Nebula, because it's very like, abstract expressionist. But this one, it's slightly different type of artist. This is Georgiana Houghton. She was making art in like the late 1800s, and what really interesting about her, she's like a Hilma, you know how like Hilma af Klint became really well known. She's like that, but earlier. And she was like a Victorian medium, and these are explicitly like spirit drawings, and people at the time were like, what the fuck, what are you doing, what are these? Never, like, they didn't know what to do with them because they were so bizarre to them. Like, imagine, like, we've seen so much, we've been over contented with like exposure to images, but you know, imagine never having seen anything like this before, like never having seen abstract art. Like, just the idea that you can be that free with, and like just make marks and make a visual experience that's abstract but so like dynamic. Not quite as maybe a direct comparison with this Veil Nebula, but it's this. But I'm getting this idea of the lines and the weaving and the overlapping. But yeah, she is like explicitly doing this as part of her mediumship practice. So I think there's something about trance and accessing the subconscious, and I'm interested as to like why does that look like space?